Hello, YouTube, and welcome back to another Dangerous Dialogue. Woohoo! This is still going. Can you believe it? 3 series in, and we're still chatting to each other about things that other people don't want to talk about. And that's exactly what we're here to do today. Yet again, this week we are talking about politics, and we'll be focusing on certain elements of politics because politics is such a wide and varied subject, I guess. But before we start that, I'd love to introduce all the people that are here, but they're going to do a better job of it than I am. So I'm going to throw us kind of round the circle. John, tell us who you are, what you do.
Hello, my name's John. I'm an actor, out of work, so a proper actor at the moment. Doing bits and pieces. And you're right, it's been a long journey since these podcasts began. I've been here the whole time. So it's been really crazy. But very excited to talk about politics. Said no one ever, but I just did.
And Brian, tell us who you are.
Hello, my name is Brian, also an out-of-work actor, working lots of children's parties at the moment. And in terms of politics, I'm a paid member of the Scottish National Party, and I would call myself a casual Scottish independence campaigner.
Lovely. I am Tom. I am your host as usual. I'm not an out-of-work actor. That's not me bragging saying I'm an in-work actor. I'm just not an actor. Yeah, I guess I'm an out-of-work director, let's say. Although I should have been in work this morning, but I missed a meeting, so apologies for that, John. Anyway, really excited to be back here with my bro, as she called herself earlier, Zoe.
Hi, I'm Zoe. I am not in the theatre world at all, apart from amateur-wise. I do social sciences, so you would think I would know a lot about politics, but I don't. And my alignment is chaotic neutral, and I'm also a Hufflepuff.
I love where this is going already. Cool. So I guess let's just get kick-started because there's no time at the present. Politics is such a big, vast topic, and I just want to know what that means to everyone. What is politics to you? Should we just go in the same order we just did that? John, kick us off. What's politics to you?
Sure. It's very different to what it used to be, is the kind of weird, unhelpful answer. I grew up in a very non-political household. And for the last couple of years, all of a sudden, I've become more and more political. And the more I learn about it, the more frustrated I get about it. It's really complicated because I love learning more about it, but it makes me more angry the more I know.
Yeah.
And also, although it's kind of very tedious, I'm one of those people who go, yeah, but it's very important. So yeah, it means a lot to me, and the way it's going, I'm only 25, and it's just going to mean more and more to me as the years go on, terrifyingly. So yeah, I didn't say before, I'm very left-leaning, which is fun because I grew up in a pretty right-leaning household.
Right.
And I grew up in a rural household, working class household that was right-leaning. And as I've gone more to urban areas, I've become more left-leaning. So it's a curious little journey, I think.
Oh, I love that. I'm so excited to get to hear more about that today. Yeah, and I just feel, because we've mentioned kind of left and right already, for anyone that's watching this that doesn't know what that means or where they sit with politics, I guess that's something we're going to talk about quite a lot today anyway. But I just want to preface it by saying we're not trying to influence your political viewpoints today. This is not a politics podcast where we're here to say this is right and this is wrong. We're just having a general conversation about kind of politics and the state of the world, I guess. I'd encourage you to do the same. Brian, what's politics to you?
Well, politics has been a journey for me. It's been a journey. I started off not caring about it. I decided it wasn't really for me. And then we get to the Scottish independence referendum of 2014. And I feel a lot of my character has been shaped by that referendum. And I feel politics since that year has very much ingrained itself in my daily life. I've become more aware, and I feel now we're getting into an era of time where politics is now involving itself more and more in our daily lives than it ever did before. We look at student unions at universities and how their politics don't affect, the day-to-day life of a student. And I feel like that comparison could have been made to our lives, about 10, 15 years ago with regular politics. But now we're in an age where, politics has an effect on, the livelihoods of people in Ukraine, all over the world, all the wars going on. And, with more cuts, the cost of living, politics is more and more important now than it ever has been to get ourselves educated.
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump to Zoe in a sec, but in some senses, I completely disagree with you, Brian, because I think that's maybe us as a generation being more conscious about politics, but it's always been there and it's always been as influential. I think it just rears its head in a much dirtier way at the moment. But anyway, I want to chat, I want to get into it, but I really also want to give Zoe the chance to answer and say kind of what politics means to her. So Zoe, the person that studies politics, no less, here.
Yeah, it's a module. I'm more inclined to psychology and sociology. I'm not gonna lie, politics is not my number one. It's enjoyable. Politics to me is currently a shambles. I'm going to put that out there. It's something that we should all be aware of to a good extent, but we're not. I think that's for reasons of them wanting to be able to do what they want without us actually knowing what's going on. And that's why they continue to make it so confusing and not as accessible to everyone. Like academic writing. But yeah, politics, it's so important in this day and age. And I do feel like our generation seems to be getting more into it and finding out for themselves, because if you don't go and research this kind of thing for yourself, you don't really know. Until I was studying politics, I had no damn clue what was going on in politics. I still don't have no damn clue what's going on in politics, but I have more of an idea. So yeah, I'm glad that we can open this conversation. I'm not the most politically minded person, although I can say for sure that I am left leaning as well. Also from a more right leaning family, although they are kind of coming around to the lefty. Although I'm still the number one snowflake in the family, but that's fine.
Badge of honor.
Absolutely, I wear it with pride. But yeah, I'm quite excited to get into this. And also, I just wanted to point out while you were speaking about we're not trying to influence anyone's political views. None of us are experts in politics either. I mean, Brian likes to think he is sometimes. But none of us are genuine experts. None of us have degrees in politics. None of us are running for any council positions or anything like that. We're just normal people who want to chat about politics and how we view it and how we think it runs.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was always told as a youngster, never talk about religion, never talk about politics, because it's points of contention for people. And as I've got older, I was like, no, I really want to talk about religion and politics with people, because it's sort of at their core, like people, whether they know it, have like very strong political opinions. They might not know that they're to do with politics, but I think
a lot of them are influenced by religion as well.
Well, absolutely. So yeah, I guess I wanted to start this off by saying, would everybody say that they are politically active here?
Yeah.
I vote. If that counts, I don't get myself into. I can't say, like, I know Brian, you've been on many marches or whatever you call them. You've been to actual like rallies before. I have not, but I do always vote.
And then that is politically active because you are voting, right? Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I would say so.
Politics. Sorry, I was just saying, like, politics is so broad as well, that I think even people who don't think they're politically active are. So politics is linked with so many different things, like class, even like local politics as well. Like if you've ever like, yeah, it's linked with so much. Asking someone if they're politically active is like asking them if they eat food. Like you don't know how much, you don't know what kind of food the person's talking about, but we've all eaten food, or at least thought about eating food.
And I think the reason I asked the question, because you're absolutely right, John, is like, I know so many people that are like, no. You're like, but you are. You have an opinion. Like, why don't you? Okay. So I guess that brings me up. Like, there was a vote this week, obviously, in the UK. We voted for new councillors in England, Wales, and wherever Zoe and I are at the moment. And in Northern Ireland, they voted for their General Assembly. So there are, it feels like it's been a very political week in some senses. Did everyone vote?
Yes.
Yes.
John,
No.
You didn't.
It's not
everywhere
as
in
juicy
England.
as you think. Yeah, I didn't have any local elections around where I was. I would have, but I didn't have the chance.
Yeah.
You live in London?
No, I live in Gravesend, Kent. So I'm just outside, and we didn't have them. But on that, I would say is that I do have, like, I've always voted, but I know some people who don't. And the reasons they give to me, I don't think I've ever had the reason of, oh, I don't care. Because especially, I don't know what it's like. I know in England, there's like so many strong seats for certain things where so many people I know who have, and it's a problem with the system. So many people don't vote anymore because there is honestly no point in them voting, because there have been seats that have been safe. I know that like Westminster changed hands recently, which is pretty big, but there are so many strong seats, particularly in rural areas, where people voting doesn't actually matter. They would rather go to their local council and complain about, or send an email to a local council rather than vote.
Do you, I'm just interested now, does everyone think that those people who don't vote deserve an opinion? Because they didn't vote for it.
Yes.
Maybe.
I like to joke that they don't, but I suppose they do in a way. It's hard, it's difficult, especially like I totally understand that perspective there, John, especially being from Scotland, because when we do UK national voting, it doesn't matter a shit what we vote, because there's more people in London than there are in Scotland. So I totally get that the disenfranchisement of it. No, not disenfranchisement. That's not having the right to vote. I totally get like the feeling like it's pointless, and why would we do it if we're not going to change anything? But if all these people who are not trying to change anything actually came and did something, there's a possibility that it could change. But it all depends on what's going on at the time. Like, for example, COVID, Partygate, that's all going to have an influence on who people vote for. Any past events that have happened while people have been in power, people are going to view that, and they're going to put that into their vote. But yeah, I totally get why some people don't want to. I know my dad, I hope he's all right with me saying this, he didn't bother voting in this election because he was like, I don't see the point. What is going to change if I vote in this election? So it could also depend on the type of election. People won't take the councillor elections quite as seriously as the national elections.
But I personally cannot stand that viewpoint that someone wouldn't vote in a local council election, because it is your local council that literally changed the things about where you live. So if people are like, oh, these fucking potholes, they'd be like, well, that's up to your local council to fix, right? It is the day-to-day things that they're in charge of. So I think, I don't know what the voter turnout was, but I think it was roughly around like 40-something%, which means that if all those people who didn't turn up to vote voted, it would make a huge difference. That's why I say, do those people deserve an opinion? Because their opinion could have been heard and really could have changed results.
They do, and I think that with these people as well, like a lot of the time it's people that have voted before but have given up voting, and it's a thing that I've kind of learned talking to my parents, who aren't very political at all, but the more that I talk to them, the more you get these kind of phrases that have almost been drilled into them for like 30, 40, 50 years of things like they're all as bad as each other. Nothing has changed. This is always this, it goes round and roundabouts. There's right. I mean, in this country, there's always Labour, Tory, and it will just continue going. And then, I mean, I know you used the words disenfranchisement. I think it's a real problem, particularly for people, because they've had this message for so long that they're almost becoming disassociated with politics. They're becoming disinterested, not because they don't care, but because they're being made to think that they actually don't have as much power as they actually do.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that why in this day and age, where yes, we are all still playing party politics, but actually we're the age of like celebrity politicians now, is that a good thing? Because suddenly people are motivated to go and vote. I think Trump is, whatever you think of him, the most perfect example of that, because he got people to vote that never ever would have voted because they were interested in him. He lit a spark in them. I must just say I'm in no way supporting him or what he does, but
the true colours have been shown.
Yeah, like 70 million people voted for him. That's a lot of people. Brian, I feel like you want to speak.
Yeah. Okay. Where to begin? So, local. I just want to bring it back to local council elections for a second. I think there is a lot of disenfranchisement with council elections, because I think a lot of people do genuinely see council elections as not changing an awful lot. I mean, certainly yourself, Tom, myself, and you, Zoe, we have a mutual friend who we would say is very politically active, but would also say these council elections don't change much. And actually, depending on who your national government is, they probably won't change much, because the national government is in charge of the national government is in charge of the budgets that they send to the councils. And if you have
council's in charge of what they do with them.
Yes. I mean, what essentially you have at the council elections, it's a competition of how they're going to spend, rather than I mean, yes, they have some tax raising powers, but ultimately there is not much difference between either of the parties that they can do to make huge impact. Yes, they can make little impact, but ultimately it is the national government that is in the majority. I mean, feel free to disagree with me.
I totally disagree with you. Because everything that you just said feels like two separate things. Because you've just said that it's up to, sure, they don't raise the money is given to them, and it's up to them to how to spend it. So surely what you're saying is, if it's up to them how to spend it, they have a choice. They can choose to spend it on something and not spend it on something else. And by us voting for them to make that choice, we have created something that could be different.
Yes.
Yeah, we're voting for who goes in.
Absolutely, but I think I mean, like, what I think is a lot of people would rather use their. I mean, like, people have short attention spans. People would rather use that time to vote in a national election when if they'd rather do something else than vote in what they perceive as not an important election. I mean, I would argue that a national election is more important than a council election. Not to downplay a council election, but I think the reason why we have lower voter turnout for a council election is because that perceived lack of value in the councils.
But I think this is why we're having this conversation, is not to enhance that perception of don't do it. It's like the opposite. I think, yes, of course, national elections matter a lot, but like they're equally important, because it will shape your lives. You pay council tax.
Mm-hmm.
You don't pay national tax. I mean, you do also pay national tax, but it's like your tax goes to your council.
Yeah, absolutely. But either way, what was your second point?
We had actually moved on, and you've taken us back the way, which would be great when I'm trying to make the YouTube bits. It'll be a nightmare part 1, part 2. We were talking about celebrity. I kind of want to pass on to Zoe now, because it's sort of been a while since you mentioned it. But we kind of talked about this new age of celebrity with with things. I'd mentioned Trump, but I mean, in every country there is, I guess, a move to how you personify leaders as like pseudo celebrities. Like Boris Johnson is also a really good example of that to an extent.
I remember the time where we made fun of him. I remember those times when he was mayor of London. They were better times, I have to say. In my personal opinion, yeah, we do. They count. I would say they count as types of celebrities, especially the more famous ones like Boris Johnson. I mean, Trump was famous before he went anywhere, but Barack Obama became a celebrity through his presidency. Like, he was on talk shows like Ellen DeGeneres and whatnot, and his family became celebrities as well. But I mean, they are up there for sure. I don't think we ever made them quite as famous back in like the Maggie Thatcher times. But I mean, Winston Churchill, I would kind of class him as a bit of a celebrity. You know, everyone who's had an education knows of Winston Churchill. Well, a British education anyway. I'm not sure about across the pond or anywhere else, but definitely a British celebrity. And I think American politicians are like more worldly celebrities, but then like British as in where we know them more around the world, but British politicians, I don't mean like they know more, I just mean they're more well known. But like British politicians are more well known in Britain rather than across the globe. And then there's those celebrities that get into office, which is a complete switch, like Trump or Arnold Schwarzenegger. He went from just being an actor and a bodybuilder to governor of California. The current prime minister of Ukraine, he was a celebrity before. I think he's prime minister. I can't quite remember. I don't know what they're. I'm sure it's prime minister. He was a celebrity. He was on dancing, their version of Dancing with the Stars, and he was a comedian first before he became leader of Ukraine. We'll go with that. I know he's leader.
He's a president, but yeah.
President, prime minister. See, too many P's. Okay.
All the water you've been drinking.
Yes, I know. Tell me about it.
But yeah, I guess the question is it a good thing? Is it a good thing that politicians are celebrities now?
I mean, it's dangerous. It can be good or dangerous for any type of celebrity. I think it's difficult to say. I think it depends on the person and their moral ground and what they voice. It can either be dangerous in certain circumstances, aka Trump, sorry, cough. Or
taking Trump as an example,
get further.
Exactly. But taking him as an example, I think he is a terrible human being. I don't think he's good at politics. But one thing he did do, to John's point earlier, is he made a voter turnout that people would dream of, because he re-enfranchised people that had been disenfranchised.
I think the word we're looking for is disillusionment and not disenfranchisement, because disenfranchisement is not having the right to vote. And being disillusioned with politics is, you're just like, what's the point?
You can swear.
Why am I bothering? I know I can. I don't know why I censored myself. Disenfranchisement is not having the right to vote. So, just want to.
John, you really wanted to say something there.
Yeah, I don't. It's a non-question, because in order to be a celebrity, essentially, you just have to be famous for doing something. And it's not necessarily. It needs to be about what you're a celebrity for doing. And you say like Trump got drummed up a lot of support. That's fine. But there's a wonderful quote from a very, very spiritual and artsy movie called Bruce Almighty. And he essentially is along the line says, well, when the hell did people know what they want? And I think just because you are popular does not mean you are qualified for a job. And that's the issue. You can be both. And that's why it's a non-question, because you can have celebrity status and be qualified for your job and have, small little things like morals, provable morals. and you can be good in a job. That's fine. But the celebrity status is, I mean, as soon as you're a prime minister, you're a celebrity.
Mhm.
As soon as you're a president, you're a celebrity. Whether you're popular or not, that's a different thing. There are plenty of celebrities that aren't popular. But in terms of getting voter turnout, yeah, well done for getting voter turnout. But there are a lot of cult-like elements, particularly with Trump. With Trump in particular, it's a heavily cult-like element that we haven't quite seen in this country. Well, we might have slightly seen it in this country. In this country,
not to the same extent.
I don't think we're as far away from America as we think we are, and I think that's what's scary. Yeah. I think the problem is now, and it goes back to kind of the lefty right thing, is that there is and this is not my term, this is a James O'Brien term, so I just out there. It's footballification, where instead of just going by what you think is right and you vote for whoever the person is, you look at the party and go, I'm on their team. And when they're in charge, it's your job, like a football fan, as I'm a massive football fan myself. I'm a Man United fan and we're not doing very well at the moment, but I will defend us to the hilt. I'm not going to switch my team. And it's that kind of thing. And I think that kind of people weirdly enjoy that. People enjoy the arguing. People kind of enjoy having someone to fight against. Yeah. And I think if a person can use that and turn people against each other, because that's Trump's celebrity, I don't think won him that amount of votes. What won him that amount of votes is because he alienated so many people against so many other people, and made them passionate and angry enough to vote, in my opinion. So I don't necessarily think it's a celebrity issue. I personally wouldn't like to see many celebrities get in, because I just don't think it's, be a politician, don't be a celebrity. But
the Love Island party, imagine it.
Imagine.
I was going to say just on your points there, John, like your footballification, like, and when you're with a team, you're loyal with a team. So even if you don't agree with who's in charge of that team, sometimes you just stick with them because you have done for so long.
Or you just say they're all the same.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't matter. I'm voting for a lesser evil, not who's best. And also on your Trump point there, like, the reason that Trump got into power was because he was playing off the ideologies that people already had. This was opinions and feelings that people already had. He just played them up. So the reason he got such a voter turnout is because these people had these beliefs already. He didn't change their beliefs. He just added to them. He just gave them leeway. So
he gave them a voice. Yeah,
he did, which is, as a politician, is what you're supposed to do, is give the people a voice. It just depends on what that voice is.
On this, I'm kind of keen to move on, but I specifically want to throw this kind of topic in Brian's direction, because I think it's something that Brian specifically would be interesting to hear from. That's the word I'm trying to say.
Nice.
I think where this is all leading is that the people that are in politics, because of the world in the way it is, because of social media, because of the popularization, I guess, of politics, suddenly, I think because of all that, things are more polarized, because more people can have a voice, because more people can tweet their thought, and it's suddenly valid because they've tweeted it. And the same goes for our politicians as well as us. We can all have that kind of opinion. The reason I'm interested to hear from you, Brian, is obviously you had quite a substantial platform on TikTok, and whether you kind of think it or not, it was a highly politicalized platform that you used to kind of spread specific things about Scotland. But I'm interested because you would have influenced lots of young people who were the demographic that you were reaching. And that is, I think, what's polarized the right and the left. The sort of far right and the extremes are more apparent now because of things like this. I'm not saying that you on TikTok, Brian, have caused
fault.
Communism
it's
and fascism.
Your fault, Brian.
Thing. But yeah, I mean, how do you feel about all that, Brian?
Well, first off, the platform does exist. I just don't use it anymore. But I think certainly in the age of TikTok, we now have a society that isn't willing to read. They aren't willing to research properly. I mean, they'll say they research things, but the research just involves looking at a single article in the Sun or the Daily Mail. But we certainly live in an era where information needs to be brief, but not necessarily true. Just needs to be brief, something that someone can get a snapshot of and then make an uninformed decision, and they will live their life by these, these false truths or truths in some cases. So I think what we have is people willing to take extreme views because that's what's easy. It's easy to take an opinion of us versus them. And, we don't live in a world where people want to, research policies. They don't want to research manifestos. They want to just see a TikTok where they see, a Trump supporter getting beaten up, or they want to see, someone just getting attacked on the street by someone who is, not from this country, and just use that single TikTok as a basis for their beliefs. They're not willing to delve deeper into a subject. They just want to, get something quick and then, base their opinions on it.
Sorry, I just want to
sure.
To add to your point there. Both of the things you've used there are kind of like, I guess, right-wing plugs, but they do exist also on our kind of left-leaning, left-leaning here, 5 reasons you should vote for the SNP in 30 seconds kind of thing. Like that's equally as terrible, I would say.
Absolutely. I mean, both on the left and the right, people just want a quick answer. Like they just want a quick reason to vote for someone. I don't think, SNP or Conservatives in 60 seconds is necessarily a bad thing. I think it's a good introduction to something, but you can't base your opinion on something just with a quick video. People need to do research. They need to read manifestos. They need to understand policy in order to make, an educated decision. But, in the world of TikTok, in the world of, tweets with 160 characters, as 180. I don't use Twitter.
It's gone way up since then, but yeah.
Actually, okay, well, whatever. People, need to read. People need to research more, and I think that's how we'll work towards a better politics rather than us versus them, black and white.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? To John's point, and John, I'll come to you. I fear that the footballization, as you've called it, and the social media of it all has made it very much, well, no, this is my party, this is how I feel. Like, I think I can say with complete conviction, I've never believed in every single policy a party has had, because arguably we just disagree on some things. Like right now, that I would say that I'm probably like a Green Party supporter, but I still don't I don't agree with some of the things they have. I was a Labour supporter at one point, didn't agree with everything they had. And I think I only know that because I have read, and I'm not pretending that I'm the most educated person in the world, because I've definitely done one of those, which political party are you, like Heat magazine type things. But yeah, you're totally right, Brian. Sorry, John.
Yeah, no, I disagree with everything. I agreed with everything. The only thing I would say is I don't think it's a thing that has happened recently at all. I think technology has made it more obvious to more people, but I've written down, I wasn't going to take notes, but I just wrote down as you were talking, Brian, Murdoch press in massive capital letters. Because essentially, and I kind of took this from, I mentioned earlier, I didn't really come from a political household, but I came from, like so many other people, to like a family where everyone who was old enough to work worked, and they worked long hours, and they would come home, they'd watch the news on BBC for an hour, sometimes they'd read a paper, and that was about as politically engaged as they were. And it was exactly the same. They didn't have time to read this, that, and the other. So they would again form strong opinions. And I mean, the press in this country is pretty much owned by a handful of very, very elitist old men. And if anything, it's a different problem, but it's not a worse problem than it was before. I mean, now you get any Tom, Dick, or Harry putting a post up and getting loads of reshares. But before, it was a select group of elitist, quite high class people writing newspapers, pretty much saying whatever they wanted, or in worst cases, whatever the government wanted, and then printing that out and shifting it off to like hundreds of thousands, millions of copies a day. And people, because it was written down and it was in black and white, and it was Sir Reginald of Sandwich, people would go, "Oh, that sounds absolutely, well, this person's posher than me, so he's more intelligent than me, so I'm going to believe him." And normally it is a him. So I think it has always been kind of a problem, but it's a good thing that it's a problem with social media now, because at least that means we're more aware of it, possibly.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to think about on that point, because I agree that the papers and kind of print media definitely was more influential then than it maybe is now, and social media is potentially taking the place of that. But is it a better thing? I don't know the answer to this, that suddenly everyone has a political platform. We're sitting on YouTube at the moment spouting stuff about politics. Is that a good thing? I think it is, that everyone is allowed to express their opinion, but it means that a lot of that falsehoods that Brian's talking about can be reshared and overshared a lot more. And I think, I don't know if people remember this, and I think specifically to TikTok, when the war broke out in Ukraine, there was a lot of videos shared on TikTok, and TikTok had to start validating things to say, yes, this is from Ukraine in this year, because a lot of people were sharing videos that just weren't from Ukraine, that weren't from 2022. And I felt like I was watching what was happening in that country. Yes, admittedly in a quick hit video, but I wasn't. So at least if it came from a paper, whoa, there is light.
I didn't realize it was get that dark so quickly. Like Shakespeare, I just felt like Shakespeare with like a candle just slightly softly lighting my face.
But yeah, I guess I'm asking in a very long fucking way, is it a better thing, what we have now, than what we did, in terms of the way that politics is shared on media?
Yes.
Awareness, yes.
To an extent.
What we have now is platforms where young people can involve and engage themselves in politics, which I would argue, might have existed in some capacity before the advent of social media. Young people need to be aware of what they're getting themselves into when they turn 16 or 18, whatever the age is to vote and wherever they're from. And by involving themselves in these spheres, when it is time for them to vote, they at least have an understanding, or they at least have the ability to, process what's in front of them more. But regardless, whether young people or not, what we have now is a space for people to freely engage with other people, with other members of the public, which necessarily before we didn't really have. We just had newspaper opinion articles, or just chatting with folk in the cafe or in the library, wherever. But now these debates can be freely had with some random in Texas, or bloke in another borough somewhere else in London.
Let me be devil's advocate for a second, because you all said yes. I'm going to say no.
I said to an extent.
I think that's the thing. I am actually, now I think about it, more inclined to say no. Although I totally agree with what you said, Brian. I get it. But I think because of the way these platforms are constructed and the algorithm behind them all, I think once you go down the black hole on either side, wherever that may be, you're there, and there's no light behind you that's suddenly going to appear that says, well, actually, here's a different opinion, because you've gone down that rabbit hole of, well, this is interesting to me. Oh, I believe this. I mean, Brian, we talk regularly about someone that you're friends with on Facebook who posts quite provocative things, and I have no doubt that their social media is entirely filled with right-wing point of views, and I don't think they have the means to even see a challenged viewpoint other than what people post in response to them on their Facebook page.
Yes, no, absolutely. But I mean, regardless of whether it's on Facebook or whether Facebook didn't exist, this said individual would just be reading the Daily Mail instead of seeing it on Facebook. But Facebook allows me to challenge his viewpoints, and by him being on Facebook, yes, he'll be a bit of an echo chamber. But there'll be other strangers that then have the capacity to challenge him. But I mean, regardless of where the platform is, if you're a hardliner on whatever subject you're a point on that, like I would say I'm a hardliner Scottish independence advocate. I don't think anything much would change my opinion on that. But I always welcome the opportunity for someone to try change my opinion. I don't think they will. But by being on social media, there is more chance or more access for people to come at me,
I think the platform is good. Sorry, I was just saying that it's the answer is yes and no, because the platform itself is good. It's good to provoke discussion. It's good to provoke people sharing ideas. It's just the disinformation and the echo chamber, as mentioned, is bad. It's like saying if you go see a theatre show that you don't like, ban the stage. It's like, no, the stage isn't the problem. It's what was put onto the stage and how that piece of art was constructed. Because if you go down the line of, this is bad, then it's like, well, more people are talking that we can see now than ever before. So is people talking bad? And that's a very different kind of discussion. But it can be both. And again, it comes down. I know that it's a question to provoke dangerous dialogues. That's what
it absolutely is. Yeah.
but that's exactly the kind of question where these days something has to be good or bad, and there's no. Like, I know we all know that there can be both, but there are a lot of people that go, I have to have a strong opinion on this, otherwise, then what's the point? So the question almost itself is almost like a representation of it, I think. But yeah, I think it's both. It's the disinformation and it's what's on the platform that's the issue that needs to be just. I don't remember who said it. Some pretty famous guy who is clearly not that famous, but I don't remember him. Said when they invented social media in general, they invented the car without the seatbelt. So because it's moved so fast, they're kind of trying to catch up on that now and trying to put all these blocks in place. The fact that it's taken this long to get fact checks is insane. So it's heading in the right direction. But I think it's both.
Yeah. And now Elon Musk owns Twitter, so he's going to put Tesla seatbelts on it. So that's fun. But again, who knows what will happen with a platform like that? Who have very, very strong opinions himself. But I mean, he's all about kind of free speech in every form. Is his jam. So he says, and that's what he wants something like Twitter to be about. That scares me. I'm not gonna lie, but
which is interesting in itself as to why it scares you, because it's almost as if the whole free speech thing used to be very much the left owned free speech. It was the right wing that were trying to like not silence people, but like kind of like they would attack free speech, and then all of a sudden it's kind of shifted a little bit to like the opposite direction.
I agree. Yeah, I think for me, there is just a difference between free speech and hate speech. And I think, unfortunately, the lines are so blurred at the extremities that I don't think people can see the difference. And that's where these platforms, I think, are difficult. I mean, Zoe, your mum, in what, maybe 10 years' time, your kid's going to have social media and will have access to all of this. And yes, you're a very influential person in his life, as is all your family. But there'll be people in Texas that Brian's talked to on the internet that could influence your kid. Does that scare you?
I mean, absolutely. When you look at it in terms of socialization, obviously your socialization begins with your parents, your carers, your family around you, your primary agents of socialization. But when you get into the secondary agents, that's when they start to form their own opinions. And it can go either way. I mean, like I said, my family was probably slightly more right-winged, although I didn't really see them all the time. But I've come out as more of a left-wing person.
You came out.
And I did finally. I finally came out for once. Low battery. Whoops. I for sure like became more of a left-wing person, and that's through secondary agents of socialization, through peers, through internet and stuff like that. So I realistically, I can influence, but I have no control over what way he's gonna go when he gets older. You know, I can just be there as a confidant, as someone he can lean on, but it's not for me to tell him what way he's supposed to go politically and any other way. That's for him to decide. So although it does terrify me, it's mostly because it's out of my control when he gets older. And that's what's scary, is he could be completely different from me and could be completely different minded from me. But that's what happens when you grow up and you become your own person, and you're not just influenced by parents anymore. And in terms of like social media and that, just because I didn't get to get my 2 cents in, it's great because it gives a platform for people to actually talk and discuss things. The problem with that is the types of people it gives a voice to.
Yeah.
You know, and there's extremists on the left and the right. It's not just on, and we do assume it's always on the right that the extremists are. And yes, I very much agree more with the left side. They can take it too far as well. And they tend to share things and look at things that are in alignment with how they think. And they'll just ignore everything else. Everything else isn't fact. It doesn't count. Anything that proves the way I'm thinking, it must mean that I'm correct.
Right.
You know? And that is a massive issue. But like back in the day when we did have the newspapers and that, they were all politically orientated. They all had a political orientation. You know, the Daily Mail was quite conservative and right-winged, and then the Guardian slightly more left-winged, but still had right-wing things. So you can't escape political orientation in any media form. There's just more to discuss now and more people to discuss it with. But there's always dangers with that. Always dangers. We're never going to get away from those dangers because people still have ideologies that are extreme that we can't ignore.
Absolutely.
We can try to.
I'm keen to just move on to like a final thing before we wrap up. It's something we've all mentioned so many times is, well, oh, but the right think this or the left think this. Yes, but I think that, as John put it, black and white thinking negates that there are like centrist politics. There's parties that sit in the middle. There are left-leaning parties, like SNP is a great example of it, who have a right-wing agenda, you could argue, because they are nationalistic, but they are very much a left-wing progressive party, etc., etc. So I don't think it is as black and white as saying, well, you know, there's this and there's this and there's left and there's right and there's us and there's them. So I guess just a final thought before we wrap up. How do we fix that? How do we fix people's polarized political thinking to go, actually, you're a lot more than one or the other?
Well, one just needs to look at Northern Ireland and the results of their election. What we're seeing, or what we've seen, is a move away from what they refer to as green and orange politics, which, you know, most people would refer to as nationalists or unionists, you know, very two hardline stances. We've seen the Alliance Party, which is the centrist party, gain way more seats. I think they've doubled their seats actually in this new election. It's possible. It is possible. And I think when people get pushed too far, or you know, they get exposed to too much negativity in politics, I think you know, the sort of softer views will prevail eventually. But just to touch on the point about nationalism being a view that's monopolized by the right, I mean, I would argue that in place with parties such as Sinn Féin, the SNP, Plaid Cymru, the Catalan Independence Party, and to an extent the Quebec Independence parties, they have left-wing. I mean, they are all left-wing in terms of their politics. I would say, as far as nationalism is concerned, when it's about independence from a bigger state, then generally speaking, that's a bit of a general term I use, but when it's about independence from a bigger state, then it tends to have characteristics of left wing, because you're going against a much larger power, I would say. That's my opinion anyway.
A bigger state like the European Union, you mean?
Yes. No.
So you think Brexit was a left-wing thought?
Brexit. Okay, so Brexit is different in the sense that it was based on superiority. It was based on, UK is we
Sovereignty.
are better. Yeah. The UK is a more powerful state than the European Union. We don't need them. We absolutely don't need them. And they're sending immigrants to us. That's how they won the referendum. They're sending immigrants to us. We're giving them £350 million. Let's put that to NHS, which turned out to be bullshit anyway. But the thing about Brexit was that the UK was already an independent state in a federation. Well, Scotland is not an independent state in a federation. It is a region, unfortunately. It's a region of the UK trying to break away from the UK. Brexit and Scottish nationalism, I would say they're different things. Yes, there's similarities in some regards, but they are different. They're fundamentally different.
Yeah, I know you said...
Go on.
Sorry, I know you said at the beginning we might argue that's the only time during this entire thing I nearly interrupted you, Tom, because they are very different things. They're like,
but by Brian's definition of something escaping a bigger state, that's a left wing.
I have to say, yes, Scottish independence and Brexit are two different things, but nationalism is a conservative ideology. It is, in layman's terms, it is more on the conservative side. It is more on the right, just the ideology itself. But Scottish independence is completely different from Brexit. Brexit, although there's similarities because we want to be a sovereign state ourselves, and we feel like, those who want independence, surprise, those who want independence, it's about sovereignty, and I think that Brexit was about national sovereignty of the UK. We wanted to be in charge of our own rules and all of our own rules, rather than having a bigger state tell us some rules that we could be in charge of. The EU was trying too much to be like a federal America. That's not really possible in Europe because we are all individual states. Whereas America is all individual states, but one nation.
I think what you're saying, though, about Scotland saying, but we want to have autonomy over our own rules, over blah, 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 blah. Everything you've said is definitely what some English people who voted for Brexit said about leaving the EU. So I'm not, I should clarify.
That's why I say nationalism is right-winged.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting because you can paint it in any way, whether it's for good reasons or for bad reasons, to give them sort of really polaristic names. But my point that I'm making in a weird roundabout way is that I think it's odd to just say that parties are left and right, because I don't think it's as basic as that.
It's not. There's a reason it's called political polarization, and it's on a spectrum and not just this side or that side. There is more in between. I'm not all the way over here as a lefty. I'm probably, and people over here, people on the right side, they aren't all the way over here just because they're right-wing or conservative. There's stuff in the middle. There's crossovers in ideologies as well.
It's better to look at it as a circle, isn't it? Because far left and far right are just the same thing. Because communism and fascism, although they are different ideals, what they end up being is ultimately the same thing, unfortunately.
If you look at communism like Stalin, etc., but if you look at a Marxist communism, it's actually completely different.
But Marxist communism is an ambition.
It's non-existent. Yeah,
exactly.
It's non-existent at the moment.
So that's my point.
Mm-hmm. Sorry. The current system of
fascism. Go on. I think you're going to explode if you don't speak, John.
No. I everything you just said was right, not you, Tom. But yeah, that's why I was trying to interrupt, being like, yes, that's so true. I think Brexit and Scottish independence are two completely separate podcasts about two completely separate things. I'm for Scottish independence. I'm not Scottish in any way. But I think that difference between independence and nationalism, I'm not educated enough in nationalism itself, but I think nationalism can be perceived both as a left thing and a right thing. It's not, I don't think it's necessarily one or the other. I think you can look inward to your own country and be like, without using a lazy phrase, proud of your own country, as long as you're proud for the right things. And that's the thing that I think English people really struggle with, about being proud of the right things. And I think Brexit was a multifaceted, big old mess that had so many different facets to it that I don't think you can really compare it to Scottish independence, which in my opinion will happen within probably the next 10 years. And it will happen eventually. It's just a case of when. But I think going back to the question about like how to prevent polarization, it's pretty much just education. And it's a case of, I don't know whether you guys learned it at school, but one of the only things I learned in like year 9 that I ever remember, and it's sources and it's just fact checking. So it was a case of, we used to go into lessons and you used to read a piece, like a political, sometimes it'd be political, sometimes it'd be historical based. And it would be whether it's a primary source, a secondary source, or a thirdly, so that's not a thing, but like another source. And it'd be like, first of all, before we even read what the article was, we said, who's writing it? Why are they writing it? When are they writing it? And what are they trying to do to the person who's reading it? And then we would read it. And it's a lot easier to do that with written text. Going back to what Brian said, it's easier to do that with written text. On social media, you've got so many anonymous people that you don't even know, you have no idea where they're coming from. Especially with like video footage as well. Like it's hard, you can't ask questions of video footage. So I think that primarily is really important, to just know where the information is coming from, so you can make your own informed opinions. And I had another point, but I've forgotten it. But that's very. Oh yeah, and secondly, the fact that it's not taught in schools is really bad. I mean, I know they attempt it, and I know that people are going, well, it's very boring to teach kids. Yeah, so's algebra, but like, we don't learn this stuff in school. I learned the majority about the two things that aren't taught in schools enough: proper British history and politics. They're not taught in schools. You learn most of those when you leave school, and it just doesn't provide a good foundation for people as they grow up, because they're more likely to believe anyone they hear, or the first person they hear, or their friend that tells them something. They don't grow up with the skills of how to understand politics, and politics by definition has to be for everyone. Otherwise, it's not a democracy. Democracy has to be for everyone. Otherwise, it fails to be a democracy. So it's about the core of just education and understanding needs to be the issue. And again, like Elon Musk bought Twitter. I think me and you had this discussion pretty recently. It's exactly the same. Murdoch owns all the newspapers, and he has done for decades. It's exactly the same thing. If anything, maybe it's more dangerous, maybe it's less. I don't know. It's exactly the same thing though, and no one's kicking. Well, not enough people are kicking off about the fact that the fact that TV channels are owned by the Murdoch press, the fact that America gets most of their news from either CNN or Fox News, which is a Murdoch-owned press, all opinion pieces. Like it's the disinformation that's the problem, and it's not the lack of education from people, because that makes people sound stupid. It's not their fault, particularly working class people who work 20 hours a day, watch an hour of news, then go to bed, and then get asked what their political opinion is. Like, they don't have the skills to differentiate. And I think that's where the problem lies, and that's where it needs to be fixed. The problem is the people at the top don't want to fix that problem, because that's how they got to the top in the first place.
Yeah, but that's not a problem that we can fix ourselves, unless we all get into politics and change everything.
Unless there's a revolution, but we're all too desensitized.
Yes, let's do it. Get the guillotines out. Come on.
I mean,
I think guillotine properly.
That has to be everyone's takeaway from this, is like, get into politics, chat about it. Like, sometimes it's nice to be slightly provocative. I don't agree with quite a lot of the stuff I've said tonight, but I'm trying to be provocative because I want to spark conversation and opinion out of people. Because it's, the point of these entire dangerous dialogues is you can't learn or know about something if you don't talk about it. And lots of the stuff we talked about tonight, I'm sure we're all going to go and jump on something else and Google or type things about, because life is just full of education. Interesting thought, just to throw back at you, John. I did have politics at school. That was a subject that was taught at my school. And
we did it a bit. It wasn't like, it was a very small amount of.
We had modern studies. That was our politics.
Yeah, modern studies was what we called politics as well. But I mean, it was a subject you could take. So I think it's interesting. I wonder, obviously we have different education systems. The three of us went to school in Scotland and you went to school in England, which I don't know. I find given the 2 countries, politics is very telling. Anyway, I just really quickly want to go round one more time and just say, what is it that you're going to take away from the conversation that we've had? Zoe, I'm going to chuck it to you.
Okay. I think don't make politics such a taboo subject. We should all chat about it, but remember to debate, not argue. There's a difference between them. Understand other people's points of view. Not everyone is going to have the same point of view as you. You don't need to argue them, and you don't need to influence them into your thoughts. You just share your thoughts and see where each other come from.
Love that. Love that. Brian?
Research everything. Always question things and read more.
Nice. It sounds like everyone's fucking practiced these. I love it. John?
My script's here.
Read, preferably a book. Read a book of someone you disagree with, because you can't disagree with someone unless you know what you're disagreeing with.
Yeah.
There are a lot of people that use phrases like woke, for example, who, when they're asked what woke means, have absolutely no idea. They throw around big phrases that they just don't understand. Socialism, they have no idea what it means, but they know it's a bad thing, and that's very strange, because socialism is essentially kept them alive. But we're basically agreeing with everyone. Like, research and read people you disagree with, and then if you still disagree with them, it means you're good. You're right. Well done. You're allowed to have that opinion. You can't disagree with something you don't know. Even if you're wrong, it's fine.
Yeah.
I love that. I think my takeaway has got to be, like, I sort of enjoyed being devil's advocate tonight, because it's a bit of what you're saying, John. It's like, sometimes it's nice to wear the other pair of shoes and see what it feels like. Question yourself, question your viewpoints and why you have them, what you think you're going to achieve by having them. Because I think it's really interesting. It's how the world is going to be shaped. Thank you so much, everyone that's watched us or is going to watch us in the future on YouTube, or anyone that has interacted with us. Sorry, we didn't really stay up in the comments. Although, Zoe, I'm sure you did, because you usually do. Anyway,
there's nothing there.
Yeah, okay, great. Next week, we are talking about the death penalty. So, we're keeping it light this series. So join us next Sunday at 8 for that. Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Brian, for joining us to spar tonight. Zoe, you were here too.
Yeah, thanks. Because I'm always fucking here, isn't it?
We can't get rid of you. It's funny, when we log off this at the end, Zoe's still there. She's still there until next Sunday.
I just sit here the entire time. I have nothing else to do.
Anyway, thank you so much. It's been awesome. Let's say goodbye. Let's be cheesy. Bye, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye.
We're gonna be here for the next 10 minutes waving. Bye.
My arm hurts. I'm in a lot of pain.
We haven't started waving on anything yet.